And we are live. And with that, I want to say, hey, Davis, man, welcome to the Survival Podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I dug getting your application because I'm always interested in people that take an alternative approach to providing the single biggest expense that people have in their lives generally is housing. And so that was cool. And you actually built the house instead of we're talking about building a house someday. So that was even better. But before we dig into that and how you guys, did a lot of your own work and did some subcontracting and built a house without a loan, which is really impressive. Give us a little bit about your background, man. Like, go back to like you're spacing out in school or whatever, and what do you end up doing professionally, and how does that happen?
Well, professionally has almost nothing to do with building a house.
Okay.
But my growing up, my father had his own construction company. He did construction remodeling. He spent most of the summers with hiring 4 to 6 guys and working roofs every day.
Okay.
Then in the off season, I'd be there helping like hold tools and stuff while I was under somebody's sink. So I did learn a lot of that, a lot of the basic skills long before I ever got to, I guess, high school, college.
Yeah.
So starting in high school, we started moving around the country. They're not an army family, but we started moving. And we did construction in every place that we've been. Um, I did have an opportunity to work under an architect, or not work. You kind of learn under an architect in the Maine, which I'm kind of an introvert, so I immediately said no. That's a regret. When I was in Colorado, we're starting to look at going into college. So what do you want to do? And I figured, well, I know how to do a lot of the construction stuff, but I hate working in the elements. It's either freezing cold or stupid hot. So I also like drawing pictures. So let's do drafting. And I
Okay.
went and I looked at some drafting stuff, and then I ended up in college in Minnesota for architectural drafting, which essentially is all the parts I wanted to do without the dealing with people and codes and stuff. So just drawing the pictures. Then I spent a lot of time where I just kind of floated around between a few jobs, and I ended up packaging boxes for a company that does electronics distribution. So that's yeah. I haven't really done much with the whole architecture and
Yeah.
whatnot.
That's actually really cool though. So you ended up with like a 10-acre triangle of land, from what I see in the notes here. Um, can you tell us like kind of the features of the land, why you picked it, how you found it, and what you had to do to get it to a point where you could actually start building? Because I find a lot of times like people like, I'll get a piece of land and I'll build a house, and it's like there's some stuff in between there.
So this is one of those places where I ended up getting really lucky a lot. Um, so I started listening to this guy called Jack Spirko, who's constantly talking about buying land and whatnot. I'm like, yes, I need to do that. I was looking around, and then one day, out of the blue, my mother's coming down from War Road, and she calls me and says, "I found a piece of land. You need to come out here now and look at it." So I'm like, okay. So I got in the car and I drove out there, and basically this triangle is right on the highway. The neighbor had decided he needed some money, so he split his 10 acres off his property, and he was put it up for sale. And she just happened to be driving down the road when like an hour or so after he put the sign up, and she begged him to take the sign down. So I got there, I looked at it. Like I said, it's right on the highway, so it already has access to the property. There's a driveway and a culvert and whatnot. There's power lines which do take up, obviously some of the property with an easement, but the power lines go right over on my side. That's kind of the long leg. There's the short leg, which is just kind of the divider between my property and his property. And then there's the hypotenuse area, which would be the longest side. That also has power lines. So to hook up the power cost us an entire $300.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no poles, no nothing. They come out here, they put in a transformer in a box. It's great.
Bring a
For
service line in, you're done. Okay, cool.
Yeah, for an extra $300, you can get a light switch to turn off the light and an outlet. That is a mistake I made. I did not do that, and now I can't turn off that light. Um, and my bedroom window, if I could turn off that light, I might actually be able to see the aurora borealis once in a while.
Got you.
So I'm gonna have to get that fixed.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so I buy this land. My mom talked them down a little bit. Yeah, it was great. We went in there. I paid 16,000, 10 acres,
Oh,
right on the
wow.
highway. It's mostly wooded, but like the center part, right where you drive on, was fairly cleared out. It started growing back a little bit, but I kind of knocked that down. Um, and you were always talking about ponds at that time. You're always talking about ponds, but I'm like, okay, I need a fish pond. So I did the responsible thing and asked the state.
Oh, yeah.
So they come out here and they look around. Where do you want to put the pond? I says, I want to put a fish pond right there. And they says, well, that will destroy the wetland. So I says, well, I'm okay increasing the amount of wetland,
Yeah.
especially in that particular area. And they're like, well, no, that would destroy the wetland. So that kind of
Ponds
discouraged me.
destroy wetlands.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah, no. And like I would have been perfectly and by wetland we're talking about wet during the spring.
mm-hmm. We're talking about mud.
Yeah.
We're talking about it'll destroy the mud.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Um
It'll ruin mud season for everybody.
I know, right? Anyway, it's I got a little discouraged. Um and that year I pretty much let my mother. Yeah, she was having some issues, or they were kicking her out of her trailer park because her trailer was too old.
Okay.
And she's like, "Can I move my trailer out there?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." So she puts a driveway through the thing, and hired a guy to haul her trailer out, and we hooked up her trailer, and she got a well and electric. So
Yeah.
that's one of those things that make me extremely lucky, because when I was building my house, I could just plug into her electricity. You just use her bathroom. So it's yeah, and we'll actually get back to that well. That well is important. So that set up all the access for me, really. Anything else about it? Not really. I think that's.
Did you accidentally push the ground down somewhere and make an accidental pond after the state said you couldn't have one?
I want to say no.
Okay.
However, due to where the driveway ended up being, this year was stupid wet.
Yeah.
So we basically had a pond for most of the year. It didn't dry up until August.
So now you got a depression that'll hold water. So you get a machine, you don't dig at all. You just go in there and you just push, right? And you push. And if they come out and say something, I just filled up. It's a wetland. I think I need to protect that. And they'll say, you better protect that. And you say, okay. That's that polter technique, right?
I did specifically want a fish pond, and I need a deep hole for a fish pond in northern Minnesota.
Yeah.
But no, wetlands easy to make here.
So you did say you had a degree in architectural drafting. Did you use that? Did you design your own house? Like, what was the process? Did you go to an architect, or kind of like rough out what you want and then take that to an architect? How did that work out?
Okay, well, the short answer to whether or not I designed it myself is yes. We had sold a previous house. I fixed it up. We sold it right when everything was going insane.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of getting $20,000 out of it, I ended up with like 40.
Okay.
So that's where we got the money to buy the house. Now, the original plan, I wanted to pay off all debts and build like a little shack or something, just a fallback thing. But the wife wanted a house. So we argued back and forth until we compromised. And the compromise was essentially building a house out here. So I'm an architect. I did architectural drafting. I enjoyed that. So I started designing a building. Um, I knew I was never going to be able to build a very large house right off the bat. So I designed it to be built in 3 sections. Um, and we're going through this and I'm drawing it out. And I'm saying, what about this? What about that? What about this? And she's getting just just annoyed with me because I keep bugging her about this. To the point where like we're getting in almost serious fights. And at some point, it dawned on me that while I see these lines on a paper and I see a house, she just sees lines on a paper.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I realized that, I ran in the house. I turned on my computer. I turned on The Sims 4, which is just a computer game, but you build houses in the computer game. I
Okay.
built the house in The Sims 4. Then I said, "Okay, come look at this." And she goes, "Oh, that's nice. Can we make the roof blue?" So the original plan was to build just the like the kitchen, living room. There would be a bathroom, a mechanical room, and a mud room section, because that would be where all the utilities were. Everything would hook up to that. The problem was, due to the layout of the land and where I wanted to put it, I would have to put the septic field to the north, and the bedroom sections would have to go into the bedroom. So I kind of flipped a thing, put the bathroom and utility room on with the bedrooms, and I had essentially a bedroom area with bathroom, utility, and we would just use one of the bedrooms for a temporary kitchen. So that was the plan, and this kind of gets into the why there's no construction loan. In order to get a construction loan, you need to have architectural documents, and I believe they have to be signed off by an actual architect. Now, I do have the ability to make architectural documents. I know how to do that, and I even know an architect I might be able to get to sign off on that, but I didn't really want to owe money on the house. Now, keep in mind, no construction loan does not necessarily mean no debt. So we'll
Gotcha.
get into that, but I did max out a couple credit cards.
Okay.
Not great, but I'm going to work that off.
Okay.
All right, see. So we designed it. Yeah, so I designed it in The Sims 4, which is a video game. It's not necessarily normal to real life.
Sure.
There are 3D architectural programs. I haven't touched them in 15 years. And while the 3D architectural back then, the 3D architectural programs were very good at being accurate, but they were a pain in the ass to actually manipulate.
Okay.
Whereas The Sims 4 is a game, it's very user friendly. So I took some screenshots of that. I'm like, well, I don't want to bother with trying to figure out how big everything is. So I went to Fiverr, found somebody to draft it up based on a thing. I had 2 requirements: 2x6 walls, and everything must be in standard or American units, not metric.
Yeah.
The initial design came back with toilets in every closet, 2 kitchens,
Okay.
and everything in metric.
Okay.
It's like, okay, send it back, delete these,
Yeah.
settings, preferences, units, standard. Just give me standard. So I got that back. And then I had a rough estimate of the sizes. And I don't remember what the actual sizes were. I didn't actually care. I just kind of in my head converted it to the nearest 2-foot chunk.
Yeah.
So really that was the process of designing it. And yeah, not everybody understands 3D things based off a 2D drawing.
No. So now that I understand not being able to get a loan, but like you're carrying debt against it. Now that it's a house, now that it's sitting there, can you now, because this is what a lot of people do that do construction projects like this, then they go get a mortgage on the property after the house is done.
Okay. Technically, this is not done.
Okay.
I still have to finish the septic field, the drain field, and the south wall has no siding.
Okay.
And the reason the south and the east wall have no siding is because we plan on making an addition.
Okay.
I could, well, it's going to have to wait till spring to finish the septic thing.
Yeah.
And I need more money to finish both the siding and that. But if I do that, then I could get a loan, but then I'd have to owe money on my house.
Yeah.
And as much
Well,
as I hate
there's
credit card
7%
debt,
money and there's 18% money, and I'm just saying,
yeah, I know.
the other thing
We're
is,
gonna
though, if you default on a credit card, oops, like versus defaulting on property, they take the property away.
right. And I'm fairly confident I can work off most of that credit card
Okay.
debt this
All right.
winter.
Fair enough.
Let's see, where are we?
Well, when you were doing, like, when people say they built their own house, usually they mean that they did some of their own work and that they also acted as their own general contractor. How much of the work that you've done so far did you do yourself versus hiring it out? And how much did you hire out versus like how much you thought you would hire out? Because I
Yeah.
find that, you know,
Okay. So I had originally intended to do all the framing, so all the woodwork essentially, all the wiring, a lot of the finish work, putting on the siding and the roof and whatnot. Um, when we get into it, like the drywall, I hate drywall. I was willing to save some money by hanging the drywall and just having a guy come in and tape and mud it. The price he quoted was $4,000, and I said I don't hate drywall that much.
yeah.
Um, so another advantage I had is that my mom's boyfriend, who is now her husband, so I guess he's my stepfather, runs a concrete company. So he knew how to do all the concrete. Now he's up in a different county, he doesn't work here, but he helped me like figure out how to lay everything out and get some materials and help me with the actual work. So I dug the hole. I put in the footing or the forms for the footing. Obviously, I have to hire the concrete truck, so the guy who comes up backs it up and dumps the concrete. My stepfather and me, filled, pushed it out into the forms. Um, when that was done, so in Colorado, in high school, they brought us to a building forum where I got to see what Nadura was, which is an insulated concrete form. And they go together like Legos. And I always wanted to do that. So I was going to do it with this property. I could not find Nadura initially. Turns out his nephew who's a contractor, has a deal with a company down in Fargo, and they get ICFs, which happen to be Nadura. So I got a slight discount on the ICFs because I was able to go through him. So basically, I got these big foam blocks, and I'm over here jumping up and down like I get to play with Legos. So I put those together. I put in all the rebar. I had to hire the guy with the pump truck and the concrete. So really, it's just pouring the concrete so far. Then the wife and I got out there, and within a few days had the floor and the walls up. Stepfather helped me a lot with the trusses, which came about a month later. And then, they helped me put the roof on and whatnot. What else was attempted to be hired out? I tried to hire out a well.
Okay.
I called him up in the spring because, the world's crazy. It takes longer to get anything. I called him up in the spring and said, hey, I'm going to need a well this summer. He says, okay, well, you're number 42 on the list. I have not heard back from him yet. So I ended up putting in my own line to my mother's well, though I did have to hire that out to dig the trench because you can't just rent a very large excavator. Over a Mini X, it comes with an operator apparently. Service wire. I didn't want to touch service wire. 200 amps. Don't want to do that. I put up the breaker panel. I got the service panel ready. I went, I says, hey, you guys do service wire? They said, yes, we do. I says, okay, I need, I think it was like a 200-foot or less. I don't remember the exact measurement of service wire run from breaker panel to service box. They're like, okay, we can get to it 6 months from now. I'm like, I need it this month. So turns out the guy living behind my stepfather used to do electrical. And while he would not touch it because he is not a certified electrician anymore or something, he was able to walk me through it. And it's actually really easy. It is literally just cut off the plastic, put some paste on it, stick it in there, and wrench it tight.
Okay.
So that was a little nerve-wracking, but found a guy to do that. What else did I tend to hire out? Let's see, drywall.
I did see a great big machine pumping concrete. I assume that you didn't run that.
Yeah, nope. No, I don't have one. I don't keep one in my back pocket. You can't rent one.
Yeah. That's kind of a specialized piece of equipment.
I believe that's like $1,000 to have that here for the hour or two it was.
Okay.
Anything else I had intended to go out? I don't think so. I think I did pretty much everything else.
Now, you were talking about the foundation and these things that look like Legos. So somebody here mentioned something called Fox blocks. Is that what those are? And can you talk about that? I saw kind of how you guys did your foundation, and I thought that's a little different than what I've ever seen done.
Okay. Fox blocks is a very similar product. It was originally what I was looking at.
Okay.
Before I found out that his nephew had Nudura at a slight discount, the contractor's discount, right?
Okay.
So it is very similar. I do think the Nudura product is probably a little bit easier to work with. It does lock in really well. And I was excited because I saw this when I was in high school and I finally got to play with it. And it is very much like you put a block down, you put another block down, you interlock them. They kind of snap together like Legos.
And are they like an aircrete or what are they made of? They look really easy to cut.
It is styrofoam.
Oh, styrofoam.
It is styrofoam with little plastic things to hold them together.
Okay.
And those little plastic things have grooves in them that you lay the rebar in.
Okay.
So you go through, you lay all your rebar in, you put on the next thing, you lay some rebar, you put on the next thing, and it goes up and up. Then what you do is you take some plywood or something, screw it around, especially the corners, and any like seams that you have. Put some plywood on that just to keep it from blowing out, because that is a risk. And you get some upright supports and whatnot just to help push the wall back and forth when they're filling it with concrete. It's a little wiggly. But it is an insulated concrete form. It's basically 2-inch foam on each side with little plastic connectors.
Okay. And the advantage to using that?
So if concrete forms are something that you reuse over and over again, and they're going to get horrible, dirty, nasty. If you work in concrete, that's something you would have.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're spending a whole lot of money to use wood that you're just going to peel off and it's going to be full of concrete.
Okay.
And then it's best to then insulate said wall. The concrete forms basically reduce the need for buying all that wood and already come insulated.
Okay. And it was kind of like when I looked at it, I couldn't really tell. K-Bonk here was asking if you had a full basement. It looked more like you had like a under-house crawl space to me. I couldn't really get scale on it.
Right. The reason you can't get scale is because I might have made a mistake here.
Okay. I just meant in the video. I couldn't tell.
I hate crawl spaces.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted a conditioned crawl space.
Okay.
But I'm a tall guy. I'm 6 foot tall.
All right.
So I thought, okay, well, we'll just make an extra large crawl space.
Okay.
And it's so extra large that if I just spent a little more money, I could have had another story.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I kind of looked at it like, if that was a little.
Yeah.
That would be on the list of things you might do differently.
Yes, that is definitely down there.
Okay. All right.
Where were we?
No, we're good there. Other than, you had some cost savings clearly by doing some of the work yourself and by being your own general contractor, because general contractors usually they're knocking 20 points on just about everything that they do. That's kind of how they earn their money, right? So you save some money. Were there other advantages to building yourself? I think maybe what we were just talking about, like being able to choose something like those forms, might have been something advantageous.
Yeah, I can see that being advantageous. The big one is the ability to change shit on the fly.
Okay.
So the original design,
without a change order and another charge.
No change order, no extra money, no contractors getting angry because you're always changing your mind. So one of the things I had as a feature is the in the front there. I think you've seen the picture. There's a big front porch there. Originally, that was just a bay window. I got that set in there. I got it framed up. I started looking for windows, which I should note, if you're going to put in a bay window, find the windows before you frame it in. Didn't do that. But I was sitting there, I was looking at this bay window. I'm like, I would rather have a sliding glass door here. I says, wife, is that okay? She goes, yes. So eventually we ended up with a porch there. That wasn't even planned. Let's see. I had the walls framed up, and my stepfather's in here. He's looking around. He's like, cool. So you don't need a mechanical room. I'm like, what do you mean I don't need a mechanical room? He's like, well, all the furnace and stuff, your crawl space is so big, you could stuck that all down there. I go, oh, you're right.
Yeah.
So I didn't input up a wall. So now my temporary living room, and we're gonna get at the quotations temporary here.
Yeah.
It's much bigger now because I didn't actually need to put the mechanical stuff anywhere. Then I was looking at the bathroom and I was trying to figure out, okay, well, tub, sink, toilet, what am I doing with the other half of the bathroom? So I got online, I found out how big a washer and dryer was, and I now have a laundry room before the bathroom. Another thing is the kitchen is now in one of the rooms. I was originally just going to put a temporary kitchen in the large room. Said large room was originally supposed to be a master bedroom, but it got really cold because winter came. We ended up in an apartment building because we didn't have enough insulation, heat, and stuff done to actually move in here. And I was looking at the way the living room and that was set up, and I realized if I just delete a wall, I have a massive room. So like the next day I showed up, I took the Sawzall, I cut a thing out, ripped a wall out. And the wife wasn't terribly happy about it until we got all the like drywall up, and she goes, this is really nice. So there is that for advantages. Do I have anything else here? Hallway removed, mechanical room deleted, heating system. That is another thing I intended to hire out, was how to do heating. I think we'll get to that in a different section. But yeah, I was originally going to have forced air heating. And now I have a electric baseboard with a backup propane heater that does not connect to electricity. So that was a massive change.
Yeah.
And I think that's all I got in here. Oh, this was on my bucket list. So I got to check off one thing on my bucket list: build a house.
Okay. Yeah, that is definitely a good item to have on a bucket list. Were there any like special tools that you needed that the average person just wouldn't have?
Okay. So building a house is a lot of different disciplines. Concrete, framing, siding, roofing, whatnot. So there's a lot of special tools. Most of your specialty tools for any given job are going to be $5 to $15. They're usually small hand tools and whatnot, such as this. For those of you who are on audio podcast, it's a drywall knife. It is very good at cutting drywall. It's for cutting holes out of drywall. It's probably a $10 tool. It is useless for everything else. What you are mostly going to be using, however, is a saw, a tape measure, a pencil, a hammer, a speed square, a knife, and a level. And you are going to do most of your construction with those few tools. A speed square is just a triangle. It allows you to make a straight line on like a board. For saw, I do have it separated into a circular saw and a chop saw. Now, there's also reciprocating saw and a table saw, which are helpful, but they're not necessarily required for most of this stuff. Under hammer, I also have like in parentheses like an air nailer. So I know you're fond of the DeWalt thing.
The cordless, yeah.
The
Yeah.
cordless
If I was
nailer.
building a house,
If
and
you were building a
I've got
house,
equipment around me, and you've got power and what have you, I would probably just use a pneumatic because
right,
they're more powerful and they're cheaper, right?
they are cheaper, especially when you consider the fact that you just unplug that that air nailer, and then you can plug in like your finish nailer.
Yeah.
So if you're building a house, I would definitely go with pneumatic instead of your thing. But basically, it's a hammer.
If
It
you're
drives a nail.
shit on your homestead and you have little projects you're doing all over the place, though, you will never regret getting a cordless framing nailer. Every day that I looked at the price and went, nah, it's so expensive, was a day that I hated myself. And the first time I did a project with it, I'm like, you are so stupid. You should have bought this the day they released it, because every project I've ever done for it, I felt like it paid for itself in that one project, just in convenience. But yeah, if you're doing a construction project, just swapping batteries and all, I mean, yeah, like you said, you can switch nailer to nailer just so easily. And I have not been willing to give DeWalt the money for a finish nailer, because I was able to buy 2 different finish nailers and extra batteries with Porter cable for less than one freaking finish nailer from DeWalt. And it was like, I hate having 2 battery platforms, but personally, I use a finish nailer 3 times a year, and worth having it, but it wasn't worth the DeWalt money. But I think that's one of those things you make a decision on how you're going to use the tool. And that's kind of what we're getting at here with, like, you're building a house versus this week I'm going to build the chicken coop, and then, next week I'm going to go over here and do some repairs in this outbuilding. You're talking about a major long-term duration project that you're doing here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
In one place.
Point being is tools, they're either fairly cheap or you rent them. Now, the one tool that I guarantee you're not going to have is one of these. So this is the Minnesota Residential Building Code book. Now I know what you preach when you are buying a house is to always have an exit strategy.
Correct.
I am in a county that said we don't enforce building codes.
Okay.
I went, ooh, that's nice. And then I thought about it for a moment, and when I did try to pay them for the building permit just to cover my rear end, and they said, no, here's your money back. So that was amazing. Yeah. But if I ever want to sell this house, it's got to be pretty damn close to code.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as much as I'd like to just not follow code in a lot of specific areas, it is best to do that if you ever plan on actually selling your house. And I have $90,000 into this building. It's worth more than $90,000, and it's because I can sell it.
Yeah.
Once I finish that septic and the siding.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the big thing. That's what makes a thing worth what somebody says, is that you can sell it. All right. You got to be able to move it. And most people don't have the money in their back pocket. They don't peel off hundreds to buy a house. They go get a mortgage. Mortgage companies tend to not want to loan money against property that doesn't appraise. So they have appraisers. They also bring in an inspector. So those 2 things have to happen. And when it comes to stuff like that with code, there's obvious and there's you'll never see it. And so, for instance, with our kitchen, when we did a remodel there, we were supposed to have to move the vent for the drain or some shit. And the guy's like, I have to do it. It's to code. I'm like, we don't have any code here. And I'm like, will it work fine? He's going to work fine. So the odds that some home inspector is going to come tear my wall apart if I sell the house and look at the position of the vent for the drain, that's not happening. But if there's a code about, let's say, size of windows, or here's where I like really learned how important this was. When I bought a house in Pennsylvania many years ago, I had no idea what I was looking at when I looked at the fact the guy had built this deck and he had put joist hangers up, and he'd done the joist hangers with a nail that shouldn't be used for joist hangers. They were aluminum or some shit. And so our inspector went in and looked at it and basically said, all those nails have to be replaced. And I'm like, wow, if you get an inspector that's that good, then if you're the guy, then you're out there. And he was pissed, and he was right, because the joist hangers, they didn't even use them to suspend the joists. They used them to hold the joists while they ran them in with lags from the outside of the ledger. But they still had to do it. And It was like, okay, so stuff like that you need to really pay attention to. That's kind of where my head is with that.
Right. So, yeah, code. And that doesn't include plumbing or electrical code.
Yeah.
I had a state inspector for electrical. I did all my electrical. And he would come in, he'd point out a few things. Okay, you got to fix this, 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 and this. And I'd fix that. And I always enjoy actually talking to the electrical inspector, because he was good. Like they're always helpful. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. Please explain this. I'm like, okay, yeah.
For what it's worth, you've got the greatest endorsement a man can get right there.
I saw that. I chipped up a little bit about that. I'm like, wait, that's my wife. That's
your wife, man. What issues did you have to deal with, because I know there were shortages in this time, finances. You mentioned not having too much trouble with the government. Did you have any interference from the Department of making you sad? Anything like that?
I amazingly had zero interference with the Department of making you sad. Now, if I was one county lower, I would have a lot more issues. I just happen to be in the right county. I just happen to be in the, I'm not actually in town. I'm south of town. So I'm just kind of in a random township. And I filed all my electrical state pay permit stuff way ahead of time. The only thing I had to do was get a septic permit and a septic design. Now the permit was only $50. The design was $500. And that is mostly because I couldn't put a regular in-ground system in. The actual Department of making me sad didn't show up. So that's one of those things where I got really damn lucky. But yeah, there were some issues. When I initially bought the wood, I was suffering because it was expensive, but I got lucky because I bought it before it got really expensive.
Okay. All right.
I only bought one pallet of 2x4s. I should have bought 2.
Mm-hmm.
If I would have known what I know now, I would have bought 10 and sold the other.
Yeah. Well, everybody would have, right?
Of
course.
But I definitely should have bought 2, because once I ran out of 2x4s, I'm going to the lumber store and I'm like, well, how much is a 2x4 today? And they're like, $9.
Yeah.
I'm like, I really need 2. And it's just like, I went in and bought a bunch of 2x2s for the way I'm insulating. And then I looked at the price and they were like $4 for a 2x2. I'm like, oh my God. Let's see. The well. I did mention the well. Still haven't heard back from him. Hopefully next year we can drill our own well and get separated from my mother's water.
Yeah.
There was the service wire. I mentioned that. They're 6 months out. I forgot the gas line. And the gas line kind of turns in with the furnace.
Okay.
So by gas line, I mean the propane tank. Getting the propane tank and filling with propane was really easy. They're like, hi, yes, we will show up and drop a tank off and hook it to your house. It was great.
Yeah.
So December 2021, I go into one of the heating companies and say, hey, I need help sizing a furnace. And they said, okay, we'll call you back. It was they didn't call me back. It was Christmas, New Year's. I'm like, whatever. It's Christmas, New Year's, whatever.
Okay.
Spring comes. I go to a different company. Hey, I need help sizing a furnace. And they're like, well, where's your blueprints? Yeah, I don't have any blueprints. They don't like it when you don't have blueprints. So we need to come out to your house and take a look and run the calculations. So it's like, okay, fine. So I set up an appointment. I take some time off work. I show up here. Nobody shows up. Nobody calls. Nothing. I call them. I'm like, hey, I'm supposed to have an appointment today. And they're like, okay, well, our boss decided to take it. Like, okay. So they gave me the number of the boss. I got a hold of their boss. And he's like, oh, yeah. I don't have time to get out there today. Can we reschedule you? It's like, no. So I went to a different company.
Yeah.
They didn't call me back. Went to a different company. They did not call me back. So I ordered, I found the calculation online for how to calculate what size furnace you need. I bought a furnace online. It was going to be here July 15th. It showed up last month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. After I'd already decided it's not coming, let's do electric baseboard. And I had brought a through-the-wall vented propane heater because I thought I was going to stick it out here last winter. And I installed that, and that's working out pretty good.
Okay.
And that's one of those things where if all my electricity goes out, I still have heat, so who cares?
Yeah. And I mean, a long term, you need to get on that because those electric baseboards. I lived in Pennsylvania, which is a very similar climate, and those electric baseboards, they just eat money. Mm-hmm. It's like you turn the heat, like it's a little bit too cold. I just need it to be, and as soon as you turn it up and it clicks on, you feel your wallet like start drilling a hole in your ass cheek, and you're like, oh my God, what just happened? Because they are not efficient at all.
No, they're not.
It was so bad, our place there, and I was making good money and all too. And I just didn't want to pay. And so we got 2 kerosene heaters. Mm-hmm. And we would at night put one in the hallway. We had a 3-bedroom house. One was my office. So we had our master and my son. And we would just have that sitting out in the hallway. And then we had the other one downstairs. And it was a coal stove that if we would have lit it, we would have been taking our life into our hands. But the prior homeowner, and we just never got it fixed, it had a vent in the floor. So we put the other one right where that stove was under that vent, and it saved us a fortune. But now kerosene is stupid expensive, right?
Yeah.
Back then kerosene was like 89 cents a gallon or something.
I think it's like $10 a gallon now.
Yeah.
Our previous house, we had electric baseboard heat. It was very leaky. And they had it on like a peak energy thing, and whatever system had been in there when they originally got the peak had been taken out. So the previous owner had been heating the place with kerosene lamps.
Yeah.
So like smoke stains on the ceiling and shit. Right. So gas line to get gas from the propane regulator to that propane heater. And this is one of those things I really got to thank the people in the TSP Discord. I believe it was Handful of Tranquility. I had no idea how to size these pipes. I'm like, does anybody know how to size these pipes? Because they didn't show up again. Took all day off, waited, nobody showed up. Oh, we'll get to it eventually. Anyway, does anybody know how to size liquid propane pipes? Handful of Tranquility, took some numbers for me. What did I need? How far is it going to go? He ran it through some system where he does and gave me the size pipes I needed. And it was actually a really easy thing to do. It really just a matter of put a pipe on, turn it with a pipe wrench, do the next pipe. So I managed to get that done like a day and a half. And I probably saved $800 right there, just not having a guy come and do it. I don't remember who it was. I don't know if it was Handful or not, but they helped me calculate like the size beam I needed to hold up my floor in the very beginning when I was just trying to figure out what kind of wood I needed. Any other delays? I don't think there was any delays. There is the whole copper wire or electrical wire, right? bought a bundle, 250 feet. It's like $80. A few months later, I need another bundle of 250 feet. It's like 120. I think the last one I bought was $100 and it was only 50 feet. So I definitely got to see things go up. There's certainly amount of I wish I bought more stuff in the beginning when I thought everything was insane already.
Yeah.
Trusses. Like I said, I had gotten the walls up and like the trusses are not coming for another month. Yeah, so I think that's all the issues I had. I'm sure there's some small stuff.
Just a couple. If you could do it over again, what would you do differently?
All right. Like I'd said earlier, if I had just put like a couple more layers of them concrete ICFs, I'd have essentially a second story for not much more money. That is probably the biggest one. And I could have even maybe put on like the attic roof trusses for the top story. I don't know if that would have actually saved me much, but yeah, I would basically have a 2-story house. I would have gotten more of my finances in order right off the bat. I might have actually done the blueprint because anytime you want to talk about anything to anybody, the first question is, "Where's your blueprint?"
Mm-hmm.
It's in my head. Would have liked to start smaller. All right. Another thing is the original plan had us starting smaller, a little chunk, and then building additions on.
Yeah.
I would have liked to start smaller. I spent a lot more money because we went bigger. There's also a lot more money spent because while I'm ready to move in, I'm ready to rough it. The wife is like, no, no. I built this really nice composting toilet, and she
Yeah.
took one look at it and said, no.
No. Okay.
That's fair. Also, everyone who says a composting toilet does not smell does not live in an airtight house.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
I would have had to put in some type of venting anyway.
Yeah.
So this is actually a really good sized house. It is 1,100 square feet. Quite honestly, I don't feel the need to add on other than I would like a better kitchen, and the room that is currently housing the kitchen is supposed to be another bedroom, and I do plan on eventually having another child.
Okay. Do you think you'd mentioned earlier if you'd gone a little deeper, you could have had a full second story with a basement? Had you done that, if you had reduced the footprint to, let's say, 900 square foot, but then gone deeper, you would have ended up with effectively 1,800 square foot under roof.
Right. And that is like, if I could have done that, I would have redesigned the house to do that. I can't actually go deeper due to the way that some of the hydrology works here. That would
You
be
could
a
have gone
swimming
higher
pool.
with the.
But yeah, higher with the
Yeah, that's
forums.
be more like a split level. I don't know if that's what they call
Right.
them, but that's what we call them in PA. That's what my house was.
And I do like the look of that. We originally wanted one level because we figured we're going to be old and we're not going to like stairs. But that would have been nice.
But that's what kids are for. Go downstairs and get daddy the thing, right?
Right.
Put in an elevator. There's been some discussion here about an angry giant named Paul Wheaton and wondering why you didn't do anything with wood heat.
Okay, so the initial plan was to eventually have a temporary wood stove. Decided to go against that because you're putting a wood stove in there. I don't necessarily like the wood stove. But on that wood heat, I was listening to your podcast with Paul Wheaton, and it was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking in my head all the reasons why I didn't put in a rocket mass heater. So number one, a rocket mass heater is going to pull in a lot of oxygen. Following modern building codes, this is a bubble. It's an airtight thing. So you can't just put a rocket mass heater in here without some type of air intake. Now there's ways around that. And also, because we're sitting on basically a wood floor and the concrete floor is in the basement, I don't
Yeah.
feel that it's structurally sound enough
Okay.
to put a rocket mass heater in what is now my living room, which was supposed to be a bedroom.
Okay.
Then there's no way my wife would let me put a rocket mass heater in the living room. And that was a very valid point. Now, when we do the addition, there is a front entry room that I want to put in, and I'm almost guaranteeing myself that I'm going to have a rocket mass heater in there.
Okay.
Of some sort. Now, while I was listening to that podcast you were doing with Paul, I was thinking, is there any way to actually, put the firebox outside and just channel the heat inside? And I was thinking of ways that I could do that, and it is possible. And then I was like, I just wish that I could put the whole rocket mass heater thing outside and just pump the air into that and back up and through all those vents and stuff I put in for the forced air furnace that I don't have installed right now. And I thought that's actually doable. Take away the room and just run a second pipe through it. And then I'm like, is there a rocket mass furnace? Do I need to make the first rocket mass furnace? I got really excited about this. I looked at Paul's plans that he gave us, and I went, I do not have the time for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I won't have the time later. Big problem is, in order to build it, I have to go outside, and I got 3 weeks before it's freezing cold. This is Minnesota.
Yeah.
But I might go collect a bunch of clay. Honestly, I've got a box right here that I'm thinking I might do it after this podcast. And if I get to it, then we'll try it. And if I don't, oh well.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a time for, I need something now.
Right.
What I thought was really cool that he brought up in that thing was the liberated rocket heater. And so
I looked at that.
It's like a vertical stove, and it actually takes less space than a big ass wood stove. And so I was going to pull that up for people to take a look at, and their site's down. I think they have more business than they can freaking deal with right now. And you need a code to access their store. So I don't think even if somebody wants one of those, you're getting one anytime soon. So, but I think we need more turnkey stuff like that. That's what I told them. I say, people have wives. I know you don't understand that. And then they say no. And then you're going to do what you're told because you're not dumb. And there's no problem with that either. I'm not, calling it a problem. Like, my wife's not letting me build a rocket mass heater in my house either. And I can deduct it. We don't need one. It's Texas. We would use it twice a year, right? It's not worth it.
It would be very advantageous to me, though.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's going to get negative 40 soon. There
was so much talk of wood and angry Wheatons that I had to ask. Anyway, would you do this again?
Hell yeah.
Okay. All right.
I thoroughly enjoy building things, specifically for myself. I don't know about other people, though I do plan on maybe getting my contractor's license and trying that out. Yeah, I mean, I thoroughly enjoy actually putting together, specifically framing, which is the part where you go from a pile of wood to a house in a week. Unfortunately, there's the year afterwards in which you're actually putting all the systems in. But that particular part I really enjoy. I would do things completely differently, just from angle of solar exposure and size and whatnot, if I didn't have to worry about, say what the wife wanted or whatnot, or codes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Do it again. That's always the biggest question. I had the guy on years ago. They built a house out of a couple shipping containers they welded together and all. And he was like, this is great. And this is great. It'll last forever. Well, I asked him if he'd do it again. He's like, hell no. No. And he said, I was on here as much to tell people how you do it as to make sure you really want to do it. Now, he did back off of that and say, so if I didn't have one, would I do it again? Yeah. But if I was going to build another place, would I do this again? He was like, not happening. No way. You can watch all the DIY stuff on cable TV you want. This is hard. And I think that that's sometimes people get attached to like these methods of building versus like what's most practical for them. Like I'm going to have an earth ship. And I'm like, I've seen a lot of 15-year-old not done earth ships.
I took your advice.
The guy's out there pounding a tire. When did you start building this? Oh, back in 96. And you're like, I don't think so, Skippy.
I have considered an earth shelter type thing with the pounded tires. I took your advice and pounded a tire and then said, nope.
Yeah. One tire.
One tire.
And that dude was on the show. He made the machine was supposed to do it. And I'm like, it's easier, but it takes just as long. Like it's one of those things you want it to work.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have like 500 hippies to show up at your place for a week and 200 of them work, well, you feed them all pizza and beer, you probably get it done. But it's man. I do like earth sheltered homes. The concept of there's a lot of insulation in the ground, but the earth ship thing I think is pretty much a New Mexico phenomenon. Anyway, man, this has been cool. You don't have a lot of stuff about housing, but you did have some links on your YouTube and some other stuff. I've got all that in the show notes today. Definitely appreciate you being with us and sharing your story. And let us know when you really start to batten down the final stuff and that journey, and maybe we'll have you come back on and talk about kind of finishing it up.
Okay. Well, I mean, really, I'm just doing trim work at the moment, and I got a few things.
Yeah.
I got this room behind me. I've been storing all my tools, needs to be finished. I got no floor here.
Well, cool, man. Hey, I appreciate you being with us today, Davis.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.